Welcome to the long game. For anyone who has ever been underestimated, this one's for you.
For 2 years, I went to every dinner. I attended his work events. I smiled at his colleagues. I asked about their weekends and remembered their children's names. I sat across from him at restaurants and laughed at the right moments. I was, by every external measure, a devoted wife who had no idea what was happening. I knew everything. I had known for 22 months, and I had not said a single word. The phone call I eventually made was 4 minutes and 30 seconds long. I had rehearsed it once. By the time I dialed, everything was already in place. Every document filed, every asset secured, every client safely moved. The call was not the plan. The call was the signal that the plan was complete. He answered on the second ring. He still thought he was winning. This is what those 2 years looked like, and this is why every single day of them was necessary. My name is Rachel. I am 41. When this story begins, I had been married to Tom for 14 years. We had a son in secondary school. We had a house. We had a shared financial advisory practice, the kind of business that takes a decade to build and that is, by its nature, built entirely on trust. I want to say something before I tell you the rest. Tom was not a bad husband in the ordinary ways. He was present. He was attentive. He came to school events. He remembered anniversaries. Whatever was happening, and something was happening, had been happening for longer than I knew, it had not yet infected the surface of our life, which made it, in some ways, significantly harder to find. The thing that found it for me was not intuition. It was a pension statement. Tom was necessary. I was reviewing our retirement accounts, something I did quarterly because I handled our personal finances as well as the business accounts, and I noticed a beneficiary change on one of Tom's individual pension funds. It had been updated 8 months earlier. The new beneficiary was not me. It was not our son. It was a name I did not recognize. I searched the name. It took 11 minutes. By the end of those 11 minutes, I understood that this had been going on for at least 2 years before I found out, possibly longer. The name belonged to a woman who worked in an adjacent industry, who had attended several of the same professional conferences Tom attended, and who had been present in the background of my life in a way I had completely failed to register. I closed the laptop. I made a cup of tea I did not drink, and then I sat at the kitchen table for a very long time, thinking about the practice, not the marriage, the practice. Because the practice was the thing. 14 years of client relationships, referrals, reputation, our son's future, my professional identity. And I had, in that moment, a very clear thought. Whatever happened to the marriage, I was not going to lose the practice as well. I was not going to let one catastrophe become two. The first thing I decided before I spoke to anyone, before I made a single move, was that Tom could not know I knew. Not yet. Not until I understood the full shape of what I was dealing with, legally and financially. Because I had worked in financial services long enough to know that the moment the other party knows you know, the clock starts. Assets move, documents disappear, positions change. So I did something that I think surprised even me. I became a better wife. I suggested we go away for a weekend in month 2. I booked it. I planned the itinerary. I was warm and present, and I said nothing. I attended his firm's client dinner in month 3 and charmed the table and said nothing. I bought him a birthday gift in month 4 that I had thought about carefully and said nothing. Every ordinary gesture of a functioning marriage, performed with complete precision, while underneath I was building something he could not see. What I was building in the hours between midnight and 3 in the morning while Tom slept was a complete picture. I went back through 5 years of business accounts. I went back through 5 years of personal accounts. I built a timeline, not of the affair. I had no interest in the affair, but of every financial decision Tom had made in the previous 3 years that I had not been fully consulted on. In month 4, I found it. I am not going to describe it in specific detail, but what I found was evidence that Tom had over the previous 26 months been systematically reducing his documented stake in the practice on paper while simultaneously increasing his effective control of the client relationships. The structure of what he had done was, if not illegal, significantly disadvantageous to me in any future dissolution of the business. He had not done this clumsily. He had done it carefully, which told me 2 things. He had been planning to leave for longer than I had known, and he had help. I printed everything. I dated everything. I wrote a chronology that was, by month 5, 47 pages long. I kept it in a folder inside a locked drawer in my car. I drove past Tom every morning and said good morning and asked if he wanted coffee. In month 6, I retained a solicitor. Not a divorce solicitor, a commercial litigation specialist with experience in professional practice disputes. I told her everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You have done something that most people in your situation do not do. You have documented everything before the other party was aware you were documenting." She also told me something I had not fully understood until that meeting, that the changes Tom had made to his documented stake in the practice may have been executed without my valid consent, that I may have signed documents I had not been given adequate opportunity to understand, that this changed things considerably. From month 6 onward, I had 3 objectives running simultaneously. First, continue to document everything Tom was doing with the business accounts in real time. Second, work with my solicitor to understand the exact legal position on the practice ownership question. Third, protect the client relationships, because in a financial advisory practice, the clients are the asset. The building, the name, the office furniture, none of it matters. The clients are everything. I had personally originated 63% of our client base. Over the following 8 months, I deepened every one of those relationships. I scheduled review meetings. I sent personal notes. I was more present, more attentive, more proactive with my clients than I had been in years, not because I was planning to take them, but because I understood that the quality of those relationships would matter enormously in any future conversation about the practice. I was not doing anything dishonest. I was doing my job exceptionally well. Month 14, my solicitor presented me with a formal legal opinion on the practice ownership matter. The short version, the documentation changes Tom had made were challengeable. Not guaranteed to succeed in court, these things never are, but challengeable in a way that would be time-consuming, expensive, and reputationally significant for someone whose professional standing depended on being perceived as entirely trustworthy. I read the opinion 3 times. I thanked her. I went home. I made dinner. By month 18, I was ready. But I waited 4 more months, because the moment I chose had to be the right moment. Not the moment I was most ready, but the moment he was most exposed. In month 22, Tom told me he had been approached about a potential merger with another practice. He presented it as good news. He was animated, enthusiastic, detailed. He had clearly been in conversation about this for some time. He had not mentioned it to me at all until this dinner, where he presented it as a decision that was largely already made. The merger, as he described it, would involve a formal valuation of our practice, and the valuation would be based on the ownership structure as currently documented, which was, as I knew and he did not know I knew, the modified structure he had been quietly engineering for 2 years. He was attempting to use the thing he had built against me at the exact moment I had become ready to use it against him. The timing was almost elegant. I said the merger sounded interesting. I said I'd want to review the terms. I said, could we talk about it more at the weekend? Then I excused myself to take a phone call, and while I was in the hallway, I sent my solicitor a 1-word message, ready. The next morning I made the phone call. I called the senior partner at the firm proposing the merger. I introduced myself and was a fellow professional, as co-founder and majority relationship holder of the practice, and I informed him that before any valuation proceeded, there were some ownership documentation matters that would need to be resolved through a formal legal process, and that I had retained a specialist solicitor whose details I would be happy to provide. The call was 4 minutes and 30 seconds. He thanked me for letting him know. He said they would need to review the situation. His tone suggested he believed the opposite of straightforward. The merger did not proceed. Without the merger, the modified ownership structure Tom had spent 2 years building became not an asset but a liability, something to be challenged rather than cashed in. Tom called me 4 times that afternoon. I answered the 4th call. He asked me what I had done. I said I had made a phone call. He said, "What phone call?" I said, "The one I had been planning for 2 years. Then I asked him when he was planning to tell me about the beneficiary change on his pension from 26 months ago. There was a very long silence, and then he said, "How long have you known?" And I said, "Almost the whole time." He had spent 2 years thinking he was the one playing the long game. He had not once considered that I might be playing one too. The divorce was filed 6 weeks later. The practice ownership dispute was settled 18 months after that. I cannot tell you the specific terms. What I can tell you is that I continue to run the practice under a new name with the clients I built. The merger never happened. Tom works somewhere else now. My son is 16. He knows the outlines of what happened, not the details, never the details, and he has asked me once whether I am angry. I told him I was for a while. In those first few weeks when I was making tea, I didn't drink and staying very still in rooms while I worked out what to do. After that, mostly, I was busy. Anger is loud and expensive. Planning is quiet, and it turns out considerably more effective. People ask me about the 2 years. They ask how I manage the performance, the dinners, the work events, the birthday present I chose carefully, the weekend away I planned and enjoyed and said nothing. And my honest answer is that it was not as hard as it sounds, because I was not pretending nothing had happened. I had simply made a decision about the order in which things would happen next. That is a different kind of control entirely. The phone call took 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The 2 years before it took everything I had. But the 2 years are what made the 4 minutes possible, and the 4 minutes are what made the next chapter mine. I let him think he was winning, because I already knew how it ended. If something in this sat with you, the pension statement, the midnight spreadsheets, the birthday present, leave it in the comments. I read every one. And if you want to hear about the woman who waited 3 years before making her move, not a phone call, but a single forwarded email, that story is already up. I will see you there.